They say blood is thicker than water, but in my family, blood was just another currency my mother tried to spend before the market crashed. I stood in my kitchen, holding a letter from the bank declaring my $350,000 mortgage paid in full. On paper, I was finally debt-free. But as the cold dread settled in my gut, I knew the terrifying truth. I was not free. I was about to be homeless. My name is Rosemary Stanton, and at 32 years old, I made my living predicting disasters before they happened. As a senior risk control specialist for Stratosphere Logistics, my days were spent analyzing shipping routes for potential geopolitical disruptions and calculating the likelihood of cargo theft in unstable regions. I was paid to be paranoid. I was paid to see the cracks in the foundation that everyone else ignored. Yet, as I dragged my carry-on suitcase up the porch steps of my bungalow on a gray Tuesday evening, I had no idea that the biggest catastrophe of my life was waiting for me inside a standard white envelope. I had just returned from a week in Chicago that could only be described as a corporate attrition test. My body ached with that specific, deep-seated exhaustion that comes from sleeping on hotel mattresses and breathing recycled airplane air for 7 days straight. All I wanted was a hot shower, a glass of cheap Merlot, and the silence of my own home. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The air in the house was stale, holding the faint, dusty scent of a space that had been closed up for too long. I dropped my keys in the ceramic bowl on the entry table and kicked off my heels, letting my toes curl against the hardwood floor. I had spent 5 years restoring this house. It was a 1920s Craftsman that had been rotting from the inside out when I bought it. I had sanded these floors myself until my hands were blistered and raw. I had stripped layers of lead paint from the crown molding and replaced the ancient plumbing that groaned like a dying animal. This house was not just an asset, it was my sanctuary. It was the physical proof of my independence. I walked over to the side table where my neighbor, Mrs. Gable, had stacked my mail while I was away. It was the usual mountain of solicitations and bills: an electric bill, a flyer for a new pizza place, a pre-approved credit card offer. Then, my hand stopped on a thick, heavy envelope from my mortgage lender. My stomach gave a small, uncomfortable lurch. In the world of finance, thick envelopes were rarely good news. They usually meant legal disclosures, escrow shortages, or audits. I ripped the flap open, my fingernail tearing jaggedly through the paper. I pulled out a stack of documents, and the first page made the breath catch in my throat. Notice of lien release. Below that, in bold, aggressive capital letters that seemed to shout at me from the page, paid in full. I stared at the words. I blinked, expecting them to rearrange themselves into something logical, like a notice of interest rate adjustment or an escrow refund. But the words stayed the same. Paid in full. A cold prickle of sweat broke out on the back of my neck. I walked into the kitchen and turned on the bright overhead light, laying the papers down on the granite island as if they were evidence at a crime scene. I checked the loan number. It matched. I checked the property address. It was definitely my house. I checked my name, Rosemary Stanton. Everything was correct. According to this piece of paper, my mortgage, which had a remaining balance of nearly $350,000, had been satisfied yesterday. I felt a wave of dizziness. This was impossible. I did not have $350,000 sitting around. My savings account held a comfortable but modest emergency fund. Certainly not enough to wipe out a 30-year mortgage in a single stroke. A clerical error. That had to be it. Someone at the bank had typed in the wrong account number, credited a millionaire's payment to my account, and triggered this automated letter. But my training kicked in risk management. You learn that coincidences are rarely just coincidences. They are usually symptoms of a system failure or a malicious act. I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling slightly as I opened my banking app. Face ID let me in. But when I tapped on the Mortgage tab, the screen did not show my balance or my next payment date. Instead, it was grayed out. A small banner across the top read, "Account closed, loan satisfied." It was not a glitch. The system genuinely believed the debt was gone. I leaned against the counter, the granite cold against my hip. Why did I feel like I was going to throw up? Most people would be celebrating. Most people would be popping champagne. But I felt a deep, primal violation. Suddenly, a memory from last week surfaced, unbidden and sharp. I was sitting across from my mother, Sylvia, at a bistro downtown. She was picking at a Cobb salad, her eyes scanning my face with that predatory affection she had perfected over the years. "You know, Rose," she had said, sipping her iced tea, "it worries me. You being all alone in that big house with all that debt. The economy is so shaky right now." "I'm fine." "Mom," I had replied, cutting my chicken. "I have a good job. I can handle the mortgage." "But for how long?" She had leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "If you ever feel overwhelmed, you know we could restructure things, share the burden of the assets. It is risky for a single woman to hold so much liability. Families should pool their resources." I had brushed it off as her usual meddling, her inability to accept that I did not need her financial help or her control. But standing in my kitchen now, looking at the paid in full letter, her words echoed with a sinister weight. Share the burden, restructure things. I dialed the customer service number on the letterhead. It was 7 in the evening, so I knew I would not get a human, but I needed to hear something. "Welcome to Centennial Home Lending," the automated voice chirped. "Please enter your account number." I punched in the digits. "Congratulations!" the voice exclaimed, the synthetic enthusiasm making my skin crawl. "Your loan has been paid in full as of February 4th. A lien release has been filed with your county recorder. Thank you for choosing Centennial." The call disconnected. Silence rushed back into the kitchen, heavy and suffocating. I looked around at the walls I had painted, the cabinets I had installed. 10 minutes ago, this house had been my fortress. Now, it felt like a trap. I did not pay this off. I did not authorize a payment. And in the world of contracts and deeds, if you did not pay for it, you do not own it. Someone else had moved money around in my name. Someone else had touched the deed to my home. I walked over to the front door and checked the deadbolt. It was locked. I checked the window latches. They were secure. But for the first time in 5 years, I did not feel safe. The threat was not someone trying to break in with a crowbar. The threat was already inside the paperwork, inside the system, invisible and terrifying. I looked down at the letter again, paid in full. It looked like a gift, but my gut, honed by years of assessing the worst-case scenarios, told me exactly what it was. It was an eviction notice disguised as a blessing, and I knew, with a sickening certainty, exactly whose handwriting was on the check that paid for it. I stared at my phone screen, my thumb hovering over the contact photo of my mother. It was a picture from 3 years ago, taken at a charity brunch where she had insisted we wear matching pastels. She looked radiant and benevolent, the perfect image of a supportive matriarch. I knew better. In my line of work, we learned that the most dangerous risks were often the ones that looked the most benign on the surface. I needed to make the call. I needed to hear her voice, but I could not let her know that I was panicking. If Sylvia smelled fear, she would strike like a shark in bloody water. I had to be the professional. I had to be the risk assessor conducting an audit. I took a deep breath, forced my heart rate to slow down, and tapped the call button. She answered on the first ring. "Rosemary?" Her voice trilled through the speaker, bright and terrifyingly cheerful. "I was just thinking about you. Did you just get in? How was Chicago? Did you freeze to death?" The immediacy of her answer set my teeth on edge. Sylvia never answered on the first ring. She liked to make people wait, to establish a subtle hierarchy of time. Picking up this fast meant she was waiting by the phone, waiting for me. "I just got in, Mom," I said, keeping my voice flat, stripping it of the exhaustion I felt. "It was long. Listen, something weird happened with the mail." "Oh?" The syllable hung there, perfectly neutral. "What kind of weird?" "I got a letter from Centennial Home Lending," I said, watching my reflection in the dark kitchen window. "It says my mortgage has been paid in full, $350,000. Just gone. The account is closed." I waited, I counted the seconds in my head. 1, 2, 3. A normal mother would have gasped. A normal mother would have screamed. What? How? Or, is it a scam? Or, oh my God, did you inherit money I didn't know about? Sylvia did none of those things. There was a silence on the other end that felt heavy, like a held breath. Then, she laughed. It was a light, tinkling sound that grated against my nerves like sandpaper. Oh, Rose, honestly, she chuckled. You and your drama. It is probably just a computer glitch. You know how technology is these days. Or maybe you won the lottery and forgot to tell your poor mother. It is not a glitch. Mom, I said, pressing the phone harder against my ear. I called the automated line. The balance is 0. The lien is released. Someone paid it. Well, then take the win, she said dismissively, as if I had found a $20 bill on the sidewalk and not a life-altering financial event. Why do you always have to look for the dark cloud? Honey, it is exhausting just listening to you. Someone does not just accidentally pay off a house. Mom, this is fraud. I feel like someone is messing with my title. You are sounding paranoid again, her voice shifted, dropping an octave into that saccharine tone she used when she wanted to make me feel small. This sounds exactly like that time in college when you thought your roommate was stealing your textbooks, remember? You get so worked up when you are tired. Are you sure you are sleeping enough? You sound manic. The gaslighting was subtle, familiar, and infuriating. She was trying to shift the ground beneath my feet, making me question my own perception of reality. I am not manic, I said sharply. I am a risk analyst. I know when something is wrong. You are stressed, she insisted, steamrolling over my objection. I told you that job was too much pressure for you. You need a break. In fact, I was thinking, why don't you let me come over and pick up the spare key? I can watch the place for a few days. You should go stay at a spa. Or maybe check in with Dr. Evans, just to get your head straight. My grip on the counter tightened until my knuckles turned white. There it was, the pivot. She had moved from dismissing the money to demanding access to the house in less than 60 seconds. She did not care that $350,000 had vanished. She only cared about getting me out of the house. I do not need Dr. Evans, I said. And why would you need the spare key? I am home. Just in case. Sweetie, she purred. If you have a breakdown, or if you need to be hospitalized for exhaustion, I just want to be a good mother and make sure your plants are watered. You know you are not stable when you are like this. I felt a cold clarity wash over me. She was projecting a narrative where I was mentally unstable, so that whatever she did next would look like an intervention. Not a theft. She was not surprised the mortgage was gone, because she knew exactly where it went. But she needed me physically gone to finish whatever she had started. I needed to confirm it. I needed to set a trap of my own. Maybe you are right, I lied, letting a tremor of fake exhaustion bleed into my voice. I am really tired. Actually, my boss called me on the drive home. They need me in Denver for an emergency audit. I have to fly out again tomorrow morning at 6. I held my breath. If she truly thought I was stressed and needed rest, she would tell me to refuse the trip. She would tell me to stay home and sleep. Oh, that is perfect, Sylvia exclaimed. The relief in her voice was instant and undeniable. I mean, it is good to stay busy, right? Yes, you go. Go to Denver. Do not worry about anything here. I do not know, Mom, I said, baiting the hook. I should probably stay and sort out this bank mess. I need to go to the recorder's office. No, absolutely not, she said quickly, her pace accelerating. Do not waste your time with bureaucrats. It is just a system error. Rose, it will sort itself out. You go to Denver. I will swing by tomorrow with my own key. Oh wait, I don't have one. Leave the spare under the mat. I will check the mail for you. I will make sure all those scary letters go away. I will make sure all those scary letters go away. She wasn't offering to read my mail. She was offering to hide evidence. Okay, I said, my voice steady. I will leave the key under the mat. I leave at 5 in the morning, so the house will be empty by the time you get here. Good girl, she said. Safe travels. Love you. Love you too, I said, and ended the call. I lowered the phone and stared at the dark screen. My hand was trembling, a physical reaction to the adrenaline flooding my system. But my mind? My mind was ice cold. She did not ask about the mortgage details. She did not ask if I had called the police. She did not tell me to rest. She practically pushed me out the door the moment I offered her an opening. She wanted the house empty. She wanted access to the mail. And she wanted me in Denver, or anywhere that wasn't here. I was not going to Denver. I was not going anywhere. My mother had just confirmed everything I suspected without admitting a single thing. She thought she was playing a game of chess with a child, moving pieces around the board while I was distracted. She did not realize that I had spent the last 10 years assessing threats for a living. She thought she was the player. She was about to find out she was the target. The automatic doors of the Centennial Home Lending Regional Branch slid open with a soft, pneumatic hiss, admitting me into a world of beige carpet, hushed voices, and aggressive air conditioning. It was 9 in the morning. According to the lie I had told my mother last night, I was currently somewhere over Nebraska at 30,000 feet. In reality, I was standing in the lobby wearing my sharpest charcoal blazer, armed with a briefcase full of identity documents and a burning need for answers. I bypassed the teller line, where people were waiting to deposit birthday checks or withdraw cash for the weekend. My problem was not a transaction. It was a crime. I walked straight to the reception desk and demanded to speak to the Director of Client Services. My tone was not rude, but it possessed the specific, unyielding density of a woman who knew exactly how corporate liability worked. Within 5 minutes, I was ushered into a glass-walled office occupied by a man named Mr. Henderson, whose tie was too shiny and whose smile was too practiced. "Ms. Stanton," he said, gesturing to a low-slung chair. "We do not usually get walk-ins for mortgage satisfactions. Usually, people are just happy to receive the good newsletter. How can I help you celebrate?" "I am not here to celebrate," I said, placing the paid-in-full notice on his mahogany desk. "I am here because I did not pay this. I want to see the payoff file. I want to know exactly where $350,000 came from." Mr. Henderson blinked, his smile faltering for a fraction of a second before he reassembled his professional mask. He tapped his keyboard, the clicks loud in the quiet room. "Well, surely a windfall isn't something to complain about? Perhaps a relative?" "Open the file. Mr. Henderson," I said. He sighed, clicked a few more times, and spun his monitor around. "Here we are. The funds were wired in yesterday afternoon. A standard wire transfer." I leaned in, scanning the glowing screen. The sender was not a bank I recognized. It was not Chase, or Wells Fargo, or any of the institutions where I held accounts. The sender was an entity listed as Golden Horizon Funding, LLC. The name sounded fake. It sounded like the kind of shell company set up in a strip mall next to a pawn shop. It reeked of hard money lending, high interest, asset-based loans that didn't care about credit scores. Only about equity. "I do not know who that is," I said, my voice cold. "I have no relationship with Golden Horizon Funding. I did not authorize them to pay off my house." "Well, they certainly had authorization from someone," Henderson said, pulling a paper file from a drawer. "We received a signed payoff request and a letter of direction. Here." He slid a photocopy across the desk. I picked it up, feeling the paper crisp between my fingers. It was a standard form authorizing the bank to accept funds from a third party to satisfy the mortgage. At the bottom was my signature. I stared at it. It was my name. It was my slant. But it was not my hand. The forgery was masterful. Most people, when forging a signature, focus on the capital letters. They make the R too big or too florid. But this forger had nailed the idiosyncrasies. They had captured the way I looped the tail of the Y in Rosemary, a habit I had picked up in high school. They had mimicked the sharp, impatient cross of the T in Stanton. It was a violation that felt intimate, A stranger could not have done this. A stranger would not have known the muscle memory of my hand. Only someone who had seen me sign birthday cards, report cards, and permission slips for 30 years could replicate this with such terrifying accuracy. "This is a forgery," I stated. "It was notarized," Henderson countered, pointing to a stamp on the second page. "We verified the notary commission. It is legitimate." I looked at the stamp. It was a digital seal, indicating a remote online notary session. In the post-pandemic world, you did not even need to be in the same room as the notary anymore. You just needed a webcam and a driver's license. I read the name on the stamp, Patricia Vane. The breath hissed out of my lungs. Patricia Vane. I did not need to look her up. I knew exactly who she was. Patricia was a woman with dyed red hair and a smoker's rasp who had been sitting at my mother's kitchen table every Friday night for the last 15 years. She was part of Sylvia's poker circle. I remembered her pinching my cheeks when I was a teenager, telling me I was going to break hearts one day. Patricia had lost her paralegal license a decade ago for something unethical, but apparently, she had managed to become an online notary. The picture was now complete, and it was uglier than I could have imagined. My mother had not just forged a signature, she had weaponized her social circle. She had used an old friend to validate the theft of my home. "I know this notary," I said, looking up at Henderson. "She is a personal friend of the suspect. This was a fraudulent transaction. I need you to reverse the payment. Send the money back to Golden Horizon and reinstate my mortgage." Henderson pulled the file back, his face hardening. The customer service facade dropped, replaced by the rigid wall of corporate policy. "Ms. Stanton, I cannot do that. As far as Centennial is concerned, the debt is validly paid. We have the funds, we have a notarized instruction, the lien has already been released to the county, the transaction is closed." "It is the fruit of a crime," I snapped, standing up. "You are in possession of stolen funds, or rather, you accepted funds based on a fraudulent instrument." "That is a matter for the police," Henderson said, standing up as well, signaling the end of the meeting. "We are not investigators. If you believe you are a victim of identity theft, you need to file a police report. Once we have a subpoena or a court order, we can cooperate. But right now, you own your home free and clear. There is nothing for us to freeze." "You do not understand," I said, my voice rising slightly, though I fought to keep it level. "By releasing the lien, you have left the title exposed. The people who paid this, Golden Horizon, they are not a charity. They are going to want their money back, or they are going to want the house." "Then I suggest you hire a lawyer," Henderson said, walking to the door and holding it open. "Good day, Ms. Stanton." I walked out of the office, the sound of my heels striking the tile floor like hammer blows. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a cold, crystalline rage. The bank did not care. To them, numbers on a screen had balanced out to zero. They did not see the trap that had been set. Sylvia had cleared the board. She had used a shell company and a corrupt friend to wipe away the bank's claim on my home, leaving the property wide open. It was a prerequisite. She couldn't steal the house while the bank held the deed. She needed it clean. She needed it vulnerable. I stepped out into the bright, blinding sunlight of the parking lot. The paid-in-full letter was still in my hand, crumpled now. I had the who, Sylvia and Patricia. I had the how, forgery and online notary fraud. And I had the source, Golden Horizon funding. But knowing it wasn't enough, I was caught in the bureaucratic gap between a civil dispute and a financial crime, if I wanted to save my house. I couldn't just be a victim, I had to be a hunter. I took out my phone and dialed the number for the county recorder's office. The bank was a dead end. But the paper trail was just beginning. The county recorder's office was located in the basement of the courthouse, a place that smelled of dry toner, floor wax, and the quiet desperation of people trying to prove they owned the ground they stood on. Unlike the bank, with its plush carpets and false smiles, this room was purely functional. Rows of metal filing cabinets stood like sentinels, and the hum of a large format printer was the only soundtrack to the destruction of my life. I approached the counter. The clerk was a woman named Martha, whose name I knew from the nameplate on her desk and the weary kindness in her eyes. She looked like she had seen every variety of property dispute in the county, from divorce liens to boundary wars. "I need to pull the title history for my property," I said, sliding my driver's license across the Formica counter. "Address is 4209 Elmwood Avenue, Rosemary, Stanton." Martha took the ID, adjusted her reading glasses, and typed the address into her terminal. Her fingers moved rhythmically over the keys, then stopped. She squinted at the screen. Then she looked at me, then back at the screen. The rhythmic clicking did not resume. "Ms. Stanton," she said, her voice dropping to a murmur. "Are you aware of the filing that came through yesterday afternoon?" "No," I said, my heart hammering against my ribs. "That is why I am here. Please print it." Martha hesitated. It was a professional pause, the kind a doctor gives before holding up an X-ray that shows a tumor. She hit the print command. The machine behind her whirred and spat out 2 documents. She stapled them separately, her movements slow and deliberate. Before sliding them under the glass partition, I picked up the first document. It was titled, "Quitclaim Deed." The legal language was dense, but the meaning was brutal in its simplicity. I, Rosemary Stanton, a single woman, for and in consideration of the sum of $10, do hereby remix, release, and forever quitclaim unto Sylvia Stanton, a single woman, all right, title, interest, and claim in and to the following real property. I felt the blood drain from my face. $10. My mother had valued my 5 years of sweat equity, my savings, and my sanctuary at the price of a fast food lunch. I looked at the signature line. There it was again, the perfect forgery of my signature, looping and confident, and right beside it, the digital stamp of Patricia Vane, witnessing the theft of my life via a remote notary session. According to this piece of paper, which was now part of the official public record, I did not own my house. Sylvia did. She had transferred the title from me to herself yesterday. "There is more," Martha said softly. "This second document is currently in the pending queue. It has been submitted for recording but has not been finalized yet because the county clerk has to verify the tax assessment parcel number. It usually takes 24 to 48 hours. I looked at the second stack of papers. It was a deed of trust. This was the smoking gun. This was the reason for the paid in full letter. The document outlined a new loan agreement. The borrower was Sylvia Stanton. The lender was Golden Horizon Funding, LLC. The numbers made me nauseous. The loan amount was $750,000. My mind raced, doing the math that my mother had undoubtedly done. The house was appraised at roughly $800,000 in the current market. My old mortgage was $350,000. Sylvia had taken out this new hard money loan for nearly the entire value of the property. Golden Horizon had wired the $350,000 to my old bank to clear the first title. That explained the paid in full letter. They needed to be in the first lien position to secure their investment. That left $400,000 in equity. "Cash out," I whispered. The realization tasting like ash in my mouth. Sylvia was doing a cash-out refinance. Once this deed of trust was recorded, which could happen at any hour, Golden Horizon would release the remaining $400,000 directly into Sylvia's bank account. I flipped to the terms of the loan. It was predatory. The interest rate was 14%. There was a balloon payment due in 12 months. It was a loan designed to fail. It was a loan sharks gave to desperate flippers or gamblers. Why? Why would she do this? My mother was selfish. Yes, but this was financial suicide. She could never make the monthly payments on a $750,000 loan at 14% interest. She would default in 3 months, and Golden Horizon would foreclose. They would take the house. Then I remembered. Thanksgiving dinner. 3 months ago. Sylvia had cornered me in the kitchen, her eyes shining with a manic light, talking about the future of finance. She had been raving about a new cryptocurrency platform, something called Nebula Chain, or Cosmos Coin. She had called it a wealth multiplier. She told me her friend Patricia had already doubled her money. I had told her it was a pyramid scheme. I had told her it was a scam. She had called me narrow-minded and jealous of her potential success. Now, looking at the loan documents, the horrifying picture snapped into focus. Sylvia wasn't stealing the house to live in it. She wasn't stealing it to sell it. She was leveraging it. She was extracting every cent of equity I had built to dump $400,000 into a Ponzi scheme. She believed, she truly, deliriously believed, that she would double the money in a month, pay off the loan, and keep the profit. She thought she was a genius investor, but I knew the reality. The reality was that in 48 hours, she would hand $400,000 to a con artist. The reality was that when the scheme collapsed, as they always did, the money would vanish, and when Golden Horizon came to collect, they wouldn't go after Sylvia. She had no assets. They would come for the collateral. They would come for my house. I looked up at Martha. The fluorescent lights seemed to hum louder, closing in on me. "This is fraud," I said, my voice trembling. "She forged my signature on the quitclaim deed. I never sold her the house. You have to stop the second recording. You cannot let that mortgage go through." Martha looked sympathetic, but she shook her head slowly. "I believe you, honey. I really do. But I am just a recorder. I record documents that meet the formatting requirements. I cannot judge the validity of a signature. If the notary seal is valid, the document is valid in our system." "But it is pending," I pleaded, pointing to the second stack. "You said the deed of trust is pending." "It is," Martha said. "But unless I get a court order signed by a judge telling me to freeze the title, it is going to be processed, once that tax number is verified. The system records it automatically. It could be tomorrow morning. It could be this afternoon." I grabbed the papers, my hands shaking so hard I nearly tore the quitclaim deed. I was trapped in a nightmare where the walls were made of paper and the floor was made of lies. My mother had not just betrayed me. She had strapped a bomb to my life and lit the fuse. She was going to burn down my future to buy lottery tickets. I checked the time on the wall clock. It was 10:30 in the morning. If the deed of trust was recorded, the funds would be released to Sylvia. Once that money hit her account, it would be transferred to the crypto scammers within minutes, and it would be gone forever. The house would be encumbered by a debt I didn't agree to, held by a lender who would happily foreclose. I had maybe 24 hours, maybe less. I didn't just need a lawyer. I needed a miracle. And I needed to stop treating Sylvia like my mother and start treating her like the hostile combatant she was. I turned and ran out of the office, the heavy doors swinging shut behind me with a sound like a prison gate closing. The time for denial was over. This was war. I sat in my car in the parking lot of the county recorder's office, the air conditioning blasting against my sweating face. I had the documents, the forged quitclaim deed and the pending deed of trust, spread out on the passenger seat like a map of a war zone. My hands were shaking, but I forced my fingers to dial the number for David Sterling, the real estate attorney who had handled my closing 5 years ago. He answered on the second ring, his voice professional and brisk. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I explained everything: the paid-off mortgage, the forged signature, the remote notary, and the pending hard money loan. There was a long silence on the line. When David spoke, his voice had lost its casual warmth. "Rosemary, listen to me very carefully," he said. "You are in the red zone. If that deed of trust gets recorded and the funds are wired to your mother, you are going to be fighting a war on 2 fronts. You will have to prove the forgery to get your title back. But Golden Horizon will claim they are an innocent third-party lender. They will foreclose on the house to get their money back while you are still waiting for a court date. You could be tied up in litigation for years, and you would likely lose possession of the home in the interim." "How do I stop it?" I asked, gripping the steering wheel. "The recorder said I need a court order. You need to file a police report immediately," David instructed. "Not a civil complaint, a criminal report, identity theft, grand larceny, forgery, get a case number. Once you have that, I can file an emergency motion for a temporary restraining order to stop the recording, but I need that police report. And I need it today. Right now. I am on my way, I said, and hung up. I drove to the precinct with a singular focus. My mind shifted gears from victim to analyst. In my job at Stratosphere Logistics, when a cargo ship was seized by pirates or a warehouse was compromised, we didn't cry, we compiled data. We built a narrative so undeniable that the insurance companies had to pay out. I needed to do the same thing here. The police station was a drab building that smelled of stale coffee and floor cleaner. The officer at the front desk was a heavy-set man who looked like he was counting the minutes until his shift ended. He listened to my story with half-lidded eyes, his expression conveying a mixture of boredom and condescension. "Look, ma'am," he said, leaning back in his chair, "this sounds like a family dispute. Your mom signed some papers you didn't like? That is a civil matter. You need to take her to small claims court or get a mediator. We don't get involved in domestic squabbles over property." "It is not a squabble," I said, my voice rising. "It is a felony. She forged my signature to secure a $750,000 loan." "She is your mother?" The officer shrugged. "Maybe she thought she had permission. Maybe it is a misunderstanding. Unless you have video of her signing it. It is he said, she said." I felt the rage bubbling up, hot and corrosive, but I shoved it down. Screaming would get me dismissed as a hysterical woman. Data would get me listened to. I opened my briefcase and pulled out my laptop. I didn't ask for permission. I spun the screen around to face him. "I am a senior risk control specialist," I said, my voice turning into calm, cold steel. "I deal in facts. Here is the IP address log from my bank, showing the unauthorized access occurred from a device located at my mother's address at 2 a.m. Here is the timestamp on the electronic notary session, which coincides with a text message from my mother asking if I was asleep. And here is the connection." I slapped the printout of Patricia Vane's notary commission onto the counter. "The notary is her poker partner of 15 years. This is not a misunderstanding. This is a coordinated conspiracy to defraud a federally insured lender and steal real property. If you refuse to take this report, I will note your badge number and include it in my complaint to the district attorney regarding negligence in the face of active grand larceny." The officer blinked, sitting up straighter. The air in the room shifted. I wasn't a daughter complaining about her mom anymore. I was a problem he couldn't just wave away. "What is the name of the lender?" a voice asked from behind me. I turned. A man in a rumpled suit stood in the doorway of the bullpen. He had tired eyes and a 5 o'clock shadow, holding a styrofoam cup of coffee. This was Detective Miller. I didn't know him yet, but I knew his type. He was the guy who actually did the work. "Golden Horizon Funding, LLC, I said. Miller's eyes narrowed instantly. The boredom vanished from his face, replaced by the sharp, predatory look of a hunter catching a scent. "Bring her back," Miller said to the desk officer. "Now." We sat in an interrogation room, not because I was a suspect, but because Miller wanted quiet. He flipped through my file, his eyebrows raising as he saw the depth of my documentation. "We have been trying to nail Golden Horizon for 6 months, Miller said, tapping a pen against the table. "They are a predatory outfit. Hard money loans to vulnerable seniors, inflated appraisals, kickbacks to appraisers, but usually, the borrowers sign willingly, so it is hard to prove fraud. But this, a straight forgery involving a crooked notary, this gives me a hook. I need a case number." "Detective," I said. "My lawyer needs to stop the recording of the deed. If that money hits my mother's account, it is gone. She is putting it into a crypto scheme." Miller cursed under his breath. "Right, the classic exit strategy. Okay. I am opening a file for identity theft, forgery, and grand larceny. I will give you the number. But to get a warrant to arrest her or stop the bank, I need a judge to sign off. That takes time, probably 24 hours. "I don't have 24 hours, I said. The deed is pending right now. I will call the recorder's office and try to put an administrative hold on it. Tell them it is an active crime scene," Miller said, standing up. "But you need to stay away from her. Don't tip her off. If she knows we are on to her, she might try to accelerate the funding or destroy evidence." Just then, my phone buzzed on the metal table. It was a sharp, double vibration that signaled a security alert. I looked down. A notification from my home security app flashed on the screen. Movement detected. Front porch. My mother knew I had a Ring doorbell. She knew how to avoid it or cover it, but she didn't know that 6 months ago, after a string of package thefts in the neighborhood. I had installed a high-definition, hidden camera in the recess of the porch light and another one inside the living room vent. I tapped the notification. The live feed loaded, crisp and clear. My blood ran cold. There was Sylvia, standing on my front porch. She was wearing her closer outfit, a sharp navy blazer and pearls. The costume she wore when she wanted to project authority, but she wasn't alone. 2 men in cheap black suits were standing behind her. One was holding a clipboard. The other was holding a laser measuring device. I turned the volume up. The audio from the hidden microphone crackled through the quiet interrogation room. "It is a lovely property," Sylvia was saying, her voice dripping with false charm. "My daughter has moved out, so the place is vacant. You can do your appraisal today. I want to make sure we can expedite the closing." One of the men grunted, looking at the door. "We need to see the interior to verify the square footage and condition for the final loan approval." "Of course," Sylvia said. She reached into her purse and pulled out a key. The spare key I had told her was under the mat. She hadn't looked under the mat. She had made a copy weeks ago. "Right this way. Gentlemen, as the new owner, I give you full access." I watched, paralyzed with fury, as she unlocked my front door and ushered the 2 strangers into my sanctuary. "That is her," I whispered, pointing at the screen. "That is my mother, and those are the appraisers from Golden Horizon." Detective Miller leaned over my shoulder, watching the feed. "She is breaking and entering," he said, his voice low, "and she is impersonating the owner to facilitate fraud." "She is finalizing the loan," I said. "Once they sign off on the condition of the house, the money gets released." Miller grabbed his jacket off the back of the chair. "Can you record that?" "I am recording it right now," I said. "Good," Miller said, his face setting into a hard line. "Don't disconnect. We are going to pay your mother a visit, if she wants to play homeowner. Let's see how she handles a raid." He keyed his radio. "Miller to dispatch. I have a 459 in progress at 4209 Elmwood. Suspects are inside, requesting backup units. This is connected to the Golden Horizon investigation." I stood up, grabbing my phone. The image on the screen shook as I moved, showing the empty porch where the predators had just entered. My mother thought she had won. She thought she was giving a tour of her new kingdom. She had no idea she had just invited the police to her own funeral. I sat in the driver's seat of my sedan, parked in the shadowed corner of the police precinct lot. The engine was off, but the air inside felt suffocating, thick with the heat of my own suppressed rage. Beside me, Detective Miller sat in the passenger seat, his posture rigid, his eyes locked onto the screen of my phone which I had propped up against the dashboard. On the small glowing rectangle, a silent tragedy was playing out in high definition. The live feed from the hidden living room camera showed my sanctuary being violated. The wide-angle lens captured the front door swinging open. My mother, Sylvia, stepped across the threshold first. She did not hesitate. She did not knock. She walked in with the terrifying confidence of a woman who believed her own lies. She was followed by 2 men in ill-fitting black suits. They looked like undertakers for a funeral I had not scheduled. I turned up the volume on the phone. The audio feed was crisp, picking up the sound of their leather shoes clicking against the hardwood floors I had spent a summer sanding by hand. "Like I told you on the phone," Sylvia's voice tinny but clear, "my daughter has already vacated the premises. She moved to Chicago for work. The house is completely mine now, so you can inspect whatever you need to inspect. I want this loan closed by tomorrow. We just need to verify the interior condition matches the appraisal." One of the men grunted. He was heavy-set, with a neck that spilled over his collar. He pulled out a laser measure and shot a red beam across my living room. Indifferent to the framed photos of my graduation on the mantel, he was measuring for liquidation. "It is a bit dated, I know," Sylvia said, waving a dismissive hand at my walls. "The previous owner, my daughter, had terrible taste, too much beige, no vision." I felt a physical blow to my chest. It wasn't just the theft, it was the contempt. She was selling me out, and she was insulting me while she did it. "I plan to knock down this wall here," she continued, gesturing to the load-bearing wall separating the kitchen and living room. "Open it up, make it modern. And that kitchen? Good job. I'm going to put in marble countertops once the funds are released. It will increase the value when I flip it next year." She was spending the money she hadn't even stolen yet. She was mentally demolishing my home, erasing my presence from the only place I felt safe, all to feed a delusion of wealth. The second man, a younger guy with a tablet, started taking photos. Flash, flash, flash. He opened my coat closet. Flash. He walked into my kitchen and opened the pantry. Flash. "Hey," he called out. "There is still food in here, and coats in the closet. You said it was vacant." Sylvia didn't miss a beat. "Oh, she left some junk behind. She was in a rush. I am hiring a hauling crew to toss it all in a dumpster this weekend. Don't worry about it. Junk, my winter coats, the dry goods I had stocked, my life, junk." I gripped the steering wheel so hard the leather creaked. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive home, burst through the door, and throw them out. But Miller's hand shot out and gripped my forearm. His touch was firm, grounding. "Steady," he murmured, his eyes never leaving the screen. "Don't react. Watch." On the screen, Sylvia's phone rang. She held up a finger to the appraisers, signaling them to wait, and walked toward the hallway. Right underneath the vent where I had hidden the second camera, she answered the phone. "Patricia?" "Yes. I am at the house now." My breath hitched. "Patricia Vane, the notary." No, it is fine," Sylvia said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that the high-gain microphone picked up perfectly. "The little brat is in Denver, or Chicago, somewhere. I told her I would water the plants. She has no clue." She paused, listening to the other end. Then she laughed, a cruel, sharp sound. "Stop worrying. Pat, the appraisers are here. They are loving it. Once they sign off, the wire hits my account in 24 hours. $400,000. I will transfer your cut immediately. 10,000. Just like we agreed. You can pay off that credit card debt." I looked at Miller. His jaw was set like granite. He wasn't looking at a family dispute anymore. He was looking at a conspiracy. "Did you get that?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. "I got it," I whispered. I tapped the screen, saving the clip to the cloud, then to my local drive, then emailing it to my lawyer. She just admitted to the payoff. She admitted I am unaware, and she confirmed the notary is being paid a kickback. "That is conspiracy to commit wire fraud," Miller said, listing the charges as if he were reading a menu. "Burglary, trespassing, identity theft. And since she is involving a notary in an official capacity, we have got public corruption charges for your friend Patricia." On the screen, the men were finishing up. "Looks good. Ms. Stanton," the heavy-set man said. "We will upload the report tonight. You should be clear to sign the final closing docs tomorrow morning." "Excellent," Sylvia beamed. "Where do I sign?" "The notary will bring the final packet," the man said. "Patricia Vane, right? She is on the file. She can meet you here tomorrow at 10 o'clock. "Perfect," Sylvia said. "I will see you then." She ushered them out, locked the door with my key, and stood alone in my living room for a moment. She looked around, a smile of pure, unadulterated greed spreading across her face. She ran a hand over my sofa, claiming it. Then she turned and walked out, leaving my house silent and empty once more. I slumped back in the seat, the adrenaline crash making me dizzy. "We have them," I said, my voice trembling. "We can go arrest her now. We have the video." Miller shook his head slowly. He disconnected his own phone from the car charger and turned to face me. "No," he said. "If we arrest her now, she will claim she was just exploring options. She will claim she hasn't taken the money yet. She will say it was all hypothetical. Her lawyer will plead it down to a misdemeanor trespassing." "So what do we do?" I demanded. "Let her sell my house?" "We wait for the signature," Miller said. "Tomorrow at 10, when Patricia Vane puts her stamp on that final closing document and your mother puts pen to paper to accept the loan. That is the moment the crime is consummated. That is the moment it becomes federal wire fraud. We don't want to slap her on the wrist, Rosemary. We want to bury her." He looked at me, his expression softening slightly, offering a grim solidarity. "Can you handle one more night?" he asked. "Can you let them think they have won until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning?" I looked at the black screen of my phone. I thought about the paid-in-full letter. I thought about the junk in my closet. I thought about the $10 she had sold me for. "I can handle it," I said, my voice cold and steady. "I have handled risks all my life. Let them come. I want to see the look on her face when the market crashes." Miller nodded. "Go stay at a hotel tonight. Do not go home. Do not let her see you. Tomorrow morning. We set the trap." I started the engine. The vibration of the car felt like a countdown. The time for being a daughter was over. Tomorrow, I would be the executioner. The machinery of a real estate transaction is usually slow, grinding along with the lethargic pace of credit checks and underwriting queues. But fraud moves at the speed of light. My mother's loan was currently in what the industry called the pre-funding review stage. This was the breathless pause between the promise of money and the delivery of it, the only window I had to ensure that while Sylvia walked into a trap, my equity did not walk out the door. I sat in the passenger seat of my rental car, my laptop open on my knees, tethered to my phone's hotspot. My lawyer, David, was on speakerphone. We had to thread a needle that was microscopically thin. If we alerted the escrow officer too early, they might cancel the closing, and Sylvia would spook, destroying the evidence and vanishing before Detective Miller could get the cuffs on her. If we waited too long, the wire would hit her account, and the money would be in a crypto wallet in Belize before the ink was dry. "We need to file a notice of dispute with the title insurance underwriter, not the local branch," David advised, his voice tinny through the speakers. "The local escrow officer might be incompetent or, worst case, complicit like your notary friend. But the corporate legal department? They don't play games. I will draft a notice stating that the validity of the deed is contested due to active criminal proceedings. We will time the delivery for 10:15 in the morning. That gives your mother 15 minutes to sign the papers and commit the crime. But it freezes the funds before the wire desk can release them." "Do it," I said, typing a confirmation email. "I want the net to close, but I do not want a single cent leaving that escrow account, with the legal firewall in place." I turned my attention to the enemy. I needed to know exactly who was funding this nightmare. The paperwork listed Golden Horizon Funding, LLC, a name that evoked images of glass skyscrapers and sunsets. I typed the address from the loan documents into my GPS. It did not lead to a financial district. It led to a crumbling strip mall on the edge of town, wedged between a discount vape shop and a laundromat with flickering neon signs. I drove past slowly. The office of Golden Horizon was a storefront with blacked-out windows and a peeling vinyl sign. There was no receptionist, no lobby, just a security camera pointed aggressively at the parking lot. This was not a bank. This was a chop shop for distressed assets. I needed to confirm their intent. I pulled into a parking spot down the block and called Ben, a colleague from the Stratosphere Logistics acquisition team. Ben was a shark. He spent his days negotiating hostile takeovers of failing shipping companies. He knew how to talk like a predator. "Ben, I need a favor," I said. I need you to call a hard money lender and act like you are a buyer looking for distressed debt notes. I need to know if they vetted this loan properly. I gave him the number and patched him in three-way. Muting myself. A man answered on the second ring, his voice gravelly and suspicious. Golden Horizon. Yeah, this is Ben Sterling from Apex Capital, Ben said, his voice dropping into a smooth, arrogant baritone. I am looking to buy a bundle of non-performing notes. I see you guys just underwrote a hard money loan on Elmwood Avenue. High LTV. Is that paper for sale yet? The man on the other end laughed. A wet, ugly sound. Elmwood? Yeah, we are closing that one tomorrow, but you do not want the note, buddy. You want the deed. The borrower is a total flake. No income, no job. Thinks she is a crypto genius. We wrote it at 14% because we know she is going to default in 90 days. We are just waiting to foreclose. The equity spread is massive. We are going to take the house by summer. I felt a cold chill radiate through my chest. They knew. Golden Horizon knew Sylvia was fraudulent. They knew she couldn't pay. They didn't care. They weren't lending her money. They were buying my house for pennies on the dollar, using her greed as the weapon to evict me. They were not victims of her fraud. They were accessories to it. Sounds like a bloodbath, Ben said, chuckling darkly. Keep me posted when you foreclose. I might be interested in the property. Will do, the man said, and hung up. You got that? Ben asked me, his voice returning to normal. I got it, I said. Thanks. Ben, you just confirmed they are predatory. Happy hunting. Rose, he said, and disconnected. I stared at the shabby storefront. My mother thought she was a savvy investor partnering with a financial institution. In reality, she was the mark. If I hadn't intervened, she would have handed them my home, lost the cash to a scam, and we would both be on the street while the men behind those blacked-out windows counted their profits. My phone buzzed in my lap. A text message from Sylvia. Hey, sweetie. I noticed the house is a bit dusty and cluttered. I'm going to hire a cleaning crew to come in and do a deep clean while you are away. They might need to move some boxes out to the garage. Don't worry. I am handling everything. When are you flying back? The audacity was breathtaking. She wasn't hiring cleaners. She was hiring movers. She was clearing the stage for her new life, getting rid of my junk before the ink was even dry. Move some boxes out to the garage was code for throwing my life into a dumpster. I typed back slowly, forcing my fingers to be steady. I needed her calm. I needed her confident. I needed her to walk into that room tomorrow morning feeling like the queen of the world. Ugh, Chicago is a nightmare. I wrote, my boss extended the trip. I am stuck here for at least 2 more days. Do whatever you want with the house. Just don't throw away my work files. Thanks for helping out. Mom. The response came 3 seconds later. A string of heart emojis. Poor baby. Don't worry. I will take care of it. See you in 2 days. She took the bait. She thought she had 48 hours of freedom. She had no idea she had less than 18 hours of liberty left. My phone rang again. This time it was Detective Miller. We are set. Miller's voice was clipped and professional. We have surveillance on Patricia Vane. She just printed a closing package at a FedEx Kinko's. We have confirmed she is scheduled to arrive at your residence tomorrow at 10 in the morning. Are you going to arrest them before they sign? I asked, though I already knew the answer. No, Miller said. We need the act to be completed. We need her to sign the deed of trust. We need Patricia to stamp it. Once those documents are executed, it is a completed felony with mandatory prison time. If we bust them before, they can claim they were just reviewing the paperwork. So I have to let her sign my house away, I said, the reality of it settling heavily on my shoulders. You have to let her try, Miller corrected. We will be listening. I have a team assembling at 9:30. We will be in the van down the street. You park around the corner. When I give the signal, we breach. I will be there, I said. I hung up and looked at the paid-in-full letter that was still sitting on the dashboard. It had started as a terrifying notice of loss. But now, it looked like something else. It looked like an invitation. My mother had invited the devil into our lives because she thought she could outsmart him. She did not realize that her daughter had spent 10 years learning how to kill devils with paperwork. The trap was set, the cheese was in place, and tomorrow morning, the steel bar would snap shut. The morning sky was a bruised purple, heavy with rain that refused to fall. As I parked my rental car 2 blocks away from my own home, it was 9:15 in the morning. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly, my knuckles had turned white. Beside me, Detective Miller checked his sidearm, the metallic click sounding impossibly loud in the small cabin. "Radio check," he muttered into his shoulder mic. "Unit 1, position?" "South perimeter, ready," a voice crackled back. "Unit 2?" "North alley, eyes on the back door." "Copy. Hold your positions. Wait for my signal." Miller turned to me. "Rosemary, once we go in, you stay behind me. Do not engage until the scene is secured. I know this is personal, but we need to do this by the book." "I understand," I said, though my heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. We watched the live feed on Miller's tablet, which was streaming directly from the hidden cameras inside my house. The stage was set. At 9:30 sharp, a silver Lexus pulled into my driveway. It was my mother's car. She stepped out, and for a moment, I didn't recognize her. Sylvia was wearing a cream-colored power suit I had never seen before. Her hair coiffed into a stiff, perfect helmet. She looked wealthy. She looked successful. She looked like the woman she had always pretended to be. Walking beside her was Patricia Vane, carrying a thick leather notary bag. Patricia looked nervous, her eyes darting up and down the street, lighting a cigarette with shaking hands before stomping it out on my driveway. "Showtime," Miller whispered. A minute later, a black sedan arrived. A man in a sharp, pinstriped suit got out, carrying a briefcase. This was the closer from Golden Horizon. He didn't look like a loan shark. He looked like a corporate executioner. They entered the house. My phone screen showed them settling into my living room. Sylvia took the head of the table, my dining table, acting the part of the gracious hostess in a home she had stolen. "Can I get anyone water?" she offered, her voice smooth. "Let's just get this done." "Sylvia," Patricia said, opening her bag and pulling out her notary stamp. "I have another appointment at noon." "Always in a rush." "Pat," Sylvia chuckled. "Relax. We are celebrating today." The man from Golden Horizon opened his briefcase and slid a stack of documents across the polished wood. "Here is the loan package. Ms. Stanton. Standard deed of trust, promissory note, and the disbursement authorization. As we discussed, the loan amount is $750,000. $350,000 went to clear the previous lien. The remaining $400,000, minus closing costs and origination fees, is ready to be issued to you via cashier's check upon signing." "Excellent," Sylvia said, picking up a pen. It was a Mont Blanc. I recognized it. It was my pen, taken from my desk. "You are sure the daughter isn't going to walk in?" Patricia asked, her voice low. "She is sharp. Sylvia, if she sees this—" Sylvia waved the pen dismissively. "Rosemary? Please. She is in Chicago dealing with some crisis, and even if she were here, she is too dense to notice. The girl barely reads her own mail. She trusts me implicitly. Mommy, handle this. Mommy, handle that." She is pathetic. Really. I felt a hot flush of shame burn my cheeks, followed instantly by a cold, clarifying rage. Pathetic? I was the one who had paid for the roof over her head for the last 5 years. I was the one who had bailed her out of credit card debt twice. "Besides," Sylvia continued, her voice hardening, "it doesn't matter what she thinks. This is my house now. I birthed her. I own her, and by extension, I own what she has. It is simply a return on investment." She began to sign. The scratching of the pen was audible on the microphone. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Every signature was a nail in the coffin of our relationship. "Sign here," the man pointed, "and here, and initial the interest rate disclosure." 14%, Patricia muttered. "That is steep. Sylvia." "It is temporary," Sylvia scoffed. With the returns I am getting from the Nebula platform, I will pay this entire loan off in 6 weeks. Then I will own the house free and clear, and I will have $1 million in the bank. Rosemary will thank me, eventually. Or she will be homeless, the man said indifferently. She can rent the guest room from me, Sylvia said, signing the final page with a flourish. If she follows my rules, if not, she can find an apartment. I am changing the locks this afternoon anyway. I don't want her barging in here thinking she still runs the place. Okay, the man said, gathering the signed papers. The documents are executed. Patricia stamped them. Thump, thump, thump. The sound of the notary seal hitting the paper was like a judge's gavel. Here is your check, the man said, sliding a check across the table. Sylvia picked it up. Her eyes went wide. She stared at the number, $400,000, with a look of pure, unadulterated lust. It was the look of an addict getting their fix. It is beautiful, she whispered. That is the signal, Miller said, his voice cutting through the tension in the car. He keyed his radio. All units, move in, go, go, go. The car doors flew open. We sprinted down the street, the wet pavement slick under my boots. I saw the tactical team swarm from the alley. Their vests clearly marked police. They hit the front porch like a battering ram. Police! Search warrant! Open the door! The shouting was deafening. On the screen, inside the house, chaos erupted. Sylvia dropped the check. Patricia screamed and knocked over her chair. The man from Golden Horizon tried to shove the papers back into his briefcase. The front door crashed open. Uniformed officers poured into my living room, weapons drawn. Hands! Let me see your hands! I ran up the steps behind Miller, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. We stepped into the hallway. The air smelled of rain and fear. Sylvia was standing by the table, frozen, her hands half raised. When she saw me walk in behind the detective, her face went slack. The color drained from her skin, leaving her looking old and gray beneath the expensive makeup. Rosemary? She gasped, her voice trembling. I looked at her. I didn't see my mother. I didn't see the woman who raised me. I saw a stranger in a stolen suit holding a stolen check. Hello, Mother, I said, my voice dead calm. I am home early. Miller stepped forward, handcuffs gleaming in his hand. Sylvia Stanton, you are under arrest for grand larceny, forgery, and mortgage fraud. No, Sylvia shrieked, lurching toward the table to grab the check. That is mine. I earned that. An officer grabbed her arm, spinning her around. The click of the handcuffs was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. Patricia Vane was already on the ground, sobbing, pleading with an officer. I didn't know. She told me it was okay. I was just doing a favor. Save it for the judge, the officer said, pulling her up. The man from Golden Horizon stood silently against the wall, his hands zip-tied, looking at me with cold, dead eyes. He knew the game was over. I walked over to the table and picked up the check. $400,000, the price of a mother's love. I looked at Sylvia, who was struggling against the officers, her hair mess, her dignity gone. Why? I asked softly. She stopped struggling. She looked at me. And for a second, the mask slipped completely. There was no love in her eyes, only pure, venomous spite. Because you owe me, she spat. I gave up my life for you. You have everything, and I have nothing. It is not fair. It is my turn. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized I felt nothing. No pain, no sadness, just the cold, hard clarity of a risk that had finally been mitigated. Take her away, I said to Miller, and as they dragged her out the door, screaming my name, I didn't look back. I looked at my house, my walls, my floor, my life. It was messy, and it was broken, but it was finally, truly mine. 2 months is a strange amount of time. It is long enough for the seasons to change from the wet gray of late winter to the tentative green of early spring. but it is short enough that the wound of betrayal still throbs when the weather turns cold. The Superior Court of Cook County was a monolith of stone and glass, a place designed to make you feel small. I stood in the hallway outside courtroom 4B, smoothing the fabric of my blazer, ignoring the buzzing of my phone. My aunts and uncles, Sylvia's siblings, had been calling me nonstop for weeks. They left voicemails ranging from tearful pleas to angry tirades. They told me that family settles things at the dinner table, not in a cage. They told me I was being cruel. They told me I was ruining her life, but I did not answer them. I knew something they refused to accept. I knew that Sylvia had not just made a mistake, she had made a calculation. She had weighed my well-being against $400,000, and the money had won. When the bailiff opened the heavy oak doors, I walked in with my head high. Sylvia sat at the defense table, wearing an orange jumpsuit that clashed violently with her pale, unmakeupped skin. She looked smaller, shrunken by the reality of confinement, but her eyes still held that flicker of defiance. Beside her sat a court-appointed defense attorney who looked like he had not slept in a week. The trial was swift. The evidence Detective Miller and I had gathered was not just a pile of paper, it was a fortress. Sylvia's lawyer tried the only strategy he had left. He painted a picture of a confused, elderly woman who had been swept up in the mania of the digital age. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he said, pacing before the box, "Ms. Stanton is not a criminal mastermind. She is a mother who wanted to help her family. She believed, genuinely and naively, that this investment would secure her daughter's future. Her methods were unorthodox, yes, perhaps even illegal in the strict letter of the law. But her intent? Her intent was love. She was mentally unstable, driven by anxiety for her child's financial security. It was a good speech. I saw a few jurors soften. They looked at the old woman in the jumpsuit and saw a grandmother. Not a thief. Then the prosecutor, a sharp woman named Miss Kincaid, stood up. She did not make a speech. She simply played the video. The courtroom screens flickered to life. The audio from my living room filled the silence. It was the recording from the day of the appraisal, the day Sylvia thought she had won. The house is completely mine now. My daughter had terrible taste. I am going to put in marble countertops, and then, the line that sealed her fate, the line she whispered to Patricia Vane on the phone. "The little brat is in Chicago. She has no clue I will change the locks. She can rent the guest room or get out." The softness in the jury box evaporated. They did not see a confused mother anymore. They saw a landlord evicting a tenant she despised. They saw the malice. They heard the cold, hard greed in her voice as she planned to throw me onto the street to fund her gambling addiction. Sylvia stared at the table, refusing to look at the screen. She knew. She knew the mask was gone. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. When the foreman stood up to read the verdict, the room was silent enough to hear the hum of the air conditioning. "We find the defendant, Sylvia Stanton, guilty on all counts." Judge Harrison, a stern man with no patience for white-collar predators, looked over his reading glasses at my mother. He asked if she had anything to say before sentencing. Sylvia stood up. She did not apologize. She did not ask for forgiveness. She pointed a shaking finger at me. "I gave you life," she screamed, her voice cracking. "I gave you everything. You owe me this. You are ungrateful. You are nothing without me." Judge Harrison banged his gavel, his face hardening into stone. "Ms. Stanton, your lack of remorse is chilling," he said. "You defrauded a financial institution, you corrupted a public notary, and you attempted to steal the home of your own child. You viewed your daughter as an asset to be liquidated, not a person to be protected." He looked down at his paperwork. "I sentence you to 8 years in state prison. You will serve a minimum of 85% of your sentence before being eligible for parole. You are also ordered to pay restitution for all legal fees." 8 years. I let the breath out of my lungs. By the time she got out, she would be in her 70s. The prime of her manipulation was over. Patricia Vane fared no better, because she had abused her position of public trust as a notary. The judge threw the book at her. She was sentenced to 3 years in prison and was permanently barred from ever holding a notary commission or working in finance again. As for Golden Horizon funding, the fallout was catastrophic. The testimony from my trial triggered a massive investigation by the state attorney general. It turned out my mother was not their only victim. She was just the one who got caught. Their assets were frozen. Their license was suspended. And the company filed for bankruptcy 2 weeks later. The men in the black suits were facing federal indictments of their own. But the most important moment for me came after the criminal sentencing. It was the civil order. Judge Harrison signed a document titled Order to Quiet Title. The quitclaim deed recorded on February 4th is hereby declared void ab initio, he ruled. The deed of trust favoring Golden Horizon funding is struck from the record. The property rights are fully restored to Rosemary Stanton, free and clear of these fraudulent encumbrances. It was just a piece of paper, but it weighed more than the entire house. It was the receipt for my freedom. That evening, I drove home. The rain had stopped, and the sky was a deep, clear indigo. I walked up the porch steps. The first thing I did was take a screwdriver out of my pocket. I removed the old brass lock, the one Sylvia had a key to, the one she had used to invade my sanctuary. I threw it into the trash bin with a heavy clatter. I opened the box for a new, high-security smart lock. I installed it slowly, savoring the turn of every screw. It was a biometric lock. No keys, no copies. It opened only for my fingerprint and my passcode. I programmed it. Beep, 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 click. The deadbolt slid into place with a sound of absolute finality. I stood there for a long time, looking at the door. I waited for the sadness to hit me. I waited to mourn the mother I had lost, but the sadness did not come. Instead, I felt a lightness in my chest, as if I had been carrying a backpack full of stones for 30 years and had finally set it down. I had paid off my mortgage. I had paid for the lawyer. But the biggest debt I had cleared was the emotional one. I no longer owed Sylvia my silence. I no longer owed her my safety. She had tried to sell me for parts, and I had refused to be sold. I turned and looked out at the street. The neighborhood was quiet. The lights in Mrs. Gable's house were warm and yellow. It was a normal Tuesday night. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was probably another angry cousin. Or maybe it was Ben from work asking if I was okay. I didn't check it. I didn't need to. I turned back to my door, placed my thumb on the scanner, and watched the light turn green. The door unlocked. I stepped inside my house, my beautiful, quiet, safe house, and closed the door behind me. I locked it. And for the first time in my life, I was truly home. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please leave a comment below telling me your country or city, and share your thoughts on whether you think the punishment fit the crime. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the BitterSweet Drama Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button to help more people discover this content.